She was standing there on the cold, wet street, her hair tangled and her clothes torn, yet her eyes shone with a fire that could not be ignored. Emily, the daughter of a billionaire, had never felt real fear or real struggle. Her life had been a smooth path paved with luxury and indulgence until that moment when she stumbled upon a girl who had nothing yet seemed to hold the world within her hands. Emily froze for a second, watching the girl offer her warmth and a small smile to strangers in need, and in that instant something inside her shifted, a mixture of shock, curiosity, and an unfamiliar emotion that made her heart pound. She realized that the world she knew was a fragile bubble detached from reality, and that everything she had been taught about life, power, and success might be meaningless if she could not understand courage, empathy, and true strength. Before we dive into this story, I want to ask you, what is your subscriber goal? Tell me in the comments, and imagine hitting it together as you follow along with a journey that will make you question what you thought you knew about life and wealth. Emily took a deep breath, the wind biting at her cheeks. She glanced at her father sitting in a distant car, unaware of the encounter unfolding in the shadows. She stepped closer to the girl and felt a strange mixture of fear and hope. A tiny notebook peeked from beneath the girl's coat, scribbled with words and drawings that seemed almost magical, calling out to Emily to discover their secret. And as she reached for it, her heart raced, the air seemed to hold its breath, and in that instant she knew nothing would ever be the same from this small chance meeting. The entire course of her life was about to change, and the choice she made in the next few moments would shock her family, her father, and eventually the entire world. Emily had grown up in a world of endless luxury, a mansion with golden chandeliers, expensive cars, and teachers who praised her for every small achievement. Yet despite all this wealth, she had felt a void inside, a quiet loneliness that no toy or gift could ever fill. Her father, a man of immense power and influence, spent most of his time away, leaving her in the care of nannies and tutors, and her mother often too absorbed in social events to notice the emptiness in her eyes. At school, Emily faced a different kind of struggle. Her classmates whispered about her wealth, envying her clothes and trips, and some even mocked her behind her back, making her feel isolated and misunderstood. Every request she made at home for simple family attention was ignored or brushed off, leaving her frustrated and questioning why she was surrounded by so much and yet felt so invisible. Then came the day at the park when she saw the girl without a home standing there in the cold. Emily felt a pang of confusion and guilt. The girl was dirty and shivering, yet her smile was radiant, a stark contrast to the quiet despair Emily carried inside her. It was not just curiosity that drew her closer, it was a growing sense of shame that she had been sheltered from reality for so long. While people out there struggled for basic needs, she watched the girl hand a sandwich to a small child and offer a comforting word to a woman who had nowhere to sleep. Emily felt a sharp sting of emotion. She realized she had been blinded by privilege, and all her life lessons about power, money, and influence meant nothing if she could not understand humanity and compassion. This encounter exposed the fragility of her world and the emptiness of her family bonds. The injustice she felt was not directed at the girl but at herself for having lived a life so disconnected and untested. Every step Emily took closer to the girl brought a new wave of self-awareness. She questioned her father, her upbringing, and even herself. She had been taught to compete, to succeed, and to follow rules blindly. But here was a living proof that strength and courage could exist without wealth or status. The realization struck her heart. She felt both anger and admiration, and in that tension she knew that something inside her had shifted forever, and the path ahead was uncertain, filled with questions that demanded answers and choices that would define her, not as a wealthy heiress, but as a human being capable of understanding pain, hope, and true generosity. As Emily stood there, her eyes fixed on the girl, she noticed something that made her pause. A small, worn notebook peeking from beneath the torn coat. It was tattered, and its pages bent with use, yet there was an aura about it, as if it held secrets too important to be revealed to just anyone. Emily felt drawn to it, an inexplicable pull that made her heart race. She wondered what could be inside. Words, sketches, perhaps a list of dreams, or a diary of struggles. She could only imagine the possibilities, and the curiosity was almost unbearable. The girl seemed to sense her gaze, and for a brief moment their eyes met, and Emily saw a spark of challenge in them, a silent question. Do you dare to understand? Do you dare to look deeper? She took a cautious step forward, her fingers trembling slightly as she reached for the notebook, but the girl pulled it closer, protecting it like a treasure. Emily hesitated, wondering if she should ask or simply take it. The tension in the air was palpable. The sounds of the city faded as if everything around them was holding its breath, waiting for what would happen next. The notebook seemed to glow with promise and mystery. Each second stretched endlessly. Emily's mind raced with thoughts. What could a girl with nothing possibly have written that would matter to anyone? Could it be the plans of a life changed forever, or just the scribbles of a lonely child? She could not know yet. She sensed that the answer would alter everything she thought she knew about life, wealth, and courage. The wind rustled through the pages, teasing her with glimpses. She could not fully see. Each glimpse only deepened her fascination and anxiety. She felt a mixture of fear, excitement, and reverence. It was a strange combination she had never felt before, and in that moment she realized that the notebook was not just paper and ink. It was a symbol of something much greater, something that could change her perception of the world and the people around her. She took another step closer and whispered to herself, "I need to see, I need to understand." And as the girl hesitated, Emily extended a hand, a silent offer of trust and connection. And in that fleeting moment, the boundary between privilege and poverty blurred, and the mystery of the notebook became the key that would unlock a story neither of them could have predicted. And the first chapter of this unexpected journey was about to unfold in ways that would shock everyone involved and the world watching. Emily's mind drifted back to her earliest memories, the grand hallways of her mansion, the polished floors that gleamed under the chandeliers, the endless corridors that echoed with silence. Despite the presence of servants and tutors, she remembered sitting at the piano, her fingers awkwardly striking the keys while a tutor stood behind her, correcting every mistake. Every note that was not perfect was met with a disapproving glance or a sharp word from her mother. Emily had learned quickly that mistakes were not tolerated, and that perfection was the currency of attention. Her father, a man of immense power, rarely entered the house except to lecture or admonish about grades or manners. He was a distant figure, more legend than parent, and Emily grew up longing for a connection that never came. At school, things were not much easier. She had classmates who envied her wealth, whispered cruel jokes behind her back, and teachers who praised her excessively for small achievements, making her feel like she was constantly performing on a stage she had no desire to be on. She remembered the birthday parties where every detail was planned to perfection, the gowns, the flowers, the invitations, yet she often sat alone on a velvet sofa watching other children play in ways she never could. Her mother busy with social events, often absent. Emily longed for a moment of genuine attention, a hug, a smile, a word that was truly hers, yet rarely received. The loneliness built quietly, shaping her understanding of the world. She learned that appearances mattered more than feelings, that money could buy things but not affection, and that influence could command respect but not love. She remembered a specific incident when she was 7. She had asked her father to attend a recital only to be told he had an important meeting. She had watched his car disappear down the driveway and felt a sharp pang of rejection that would linger for years. Another memory that haunted her was a school project she had poured her heart into, spending nights perfecting every detail only to have a classmate mock her in front of the teacher. The teacher had smiled politely, but done nothing to defend her. The humiliation burned deep inside, shaping a sense of injustice and a desire to prove herself in ways she could not yet articulate. Yet amidst these hardships, Emily had also discovered small sparks of resilience. She learned to navigate complex social situations, to anticipate reactions, to manage expectations, and to survive emotionally in a world that demanded she be perfect. She discovered that her strength was not in wealth or privilege, but in endurance, patience, and the ability to read people. She remembered nights lying awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if there was more to life than golden walls and perfectly planned events. She wondered if there were people who lived differently, who experienced the world not as a show but as a challenge to be met. And as these memories flooded back, she realized that her encounter with the girl in the park was the first time she had felt a connection with someone outside the bubble. She had been confined to someone whose life was harder, yet whose courage was brighter than anything she had seen in her sheltered existence. She realized that her own struggles with isolation and invisibility had prepared her in a strange way to recognize the strength in another person, and that strength was not measured in money, status, or privilege, but in the ability to face the world with heart and determination. And as she stood there remembering the moments of her past, she felt the pull of the notebook stronger than ever. It was a link to a life lived fully against all odds, a life that could teach her lessons no mansion teacher or parent ever could. And in that realization, Emily knew that she was on the cusp of something that would reshape her understanding of herself, her father, and the world she had been so carefully shielded from. The girl standing in front of Emily had a story that was invisible to most of the world, yet it radiated from every line of her face, every movement, every word she spoke. She had grown up in a neighborhood where opportunity was scarce and danger constant, where every day was a struggle to find food, water, and a safe place to sleep. She had learned early that life would not wait for her, and that she had to fight not with anger, but with intelligence, patience, and courage. She had watched family members disappear into addiction and violence, and yet she refused to let despair consume her. She discovered small acts of kindness could become a lifeline, handing out sandwiches to children, collecting discarded clothes for the elderly, teaching younger kids to read in parks. She had become a quiet force in her community, a guardian angel unnoticed by the wealthy and powerful, yet deeply respected by those who truly understood her world. The notebook she carried was a record of all her efforts, a map of her dreams, a diary of small victories and setbacks. Every page contained strategies for helping others, tracking resources, and imagining solutions for problems that seemed insurmountable. Each sketch and note reflected creativity and resilience that Emily could barely comprehend. She learned to move through the city with care, observing details others overlooked, finding hidden places where those in need could rest or eat safely. She had friends and allies who depended on her guidance and mentorship, and though she often went hungry and slept in the cold, she never let her hardships define her spirit. She had a rare ability to see potential where others saw none, to encourage where others discouraged, to create hope where despair threatened to take hold. When Emily watched her interact with the children and adults in the park, she noticed the patience in her voice, the way she knelt to meet their eyes, the gentle firmness in her hands, guiding them to do what was right and safe. She realized that this girl, though poor in material things, possessed a richness of character far beyond what Emily had ever encountered. She was a living example that strength, courage, and compassion were not bought or inherited. They were earned through experience, struggle, and choice. The girl without a home had learned lessons that money could never teach, and she embodied them with grace, dignity, and unshakable resolve. Emily felt a mixture of awe and humility. She could sense that this encounter was no accident, that the girl's life and her own were intersecting for a reason, and that the notebook she carried was more than just paper. It was a key to understanding a world. Emily had never seen a world where survival demanded ingenuity, empathy, and courage, and as she watched the girl smile at a small child handing over a slightly tattered sandwich, Emily felt the weight of her own privilege pressing down. She realized that for all her wealth and comfort, she had never truly contributed to anyone's life in a meaningful way, and that the girl in front of her had changed more lives before breakfast than Emily had in her entire existence. She understood in that instant that the girl's story would become a mirror reflecting everything Emily needed to see about herself, her family, and the possibilities that lay ahead, and the connection between them was unspoken, yet undeniable, a silent acknowledgement that this encounter was the beginning of a journey. Neither could have predicted a journey that would test courage, reshape hearts, and challenge everything they thought they knew about wealth, power, and the true meaning of giving and receiving. As Emily continued to watch the girl, her mind was racing. She thought about all the moments leading up to this encounter and how fragile her own world had always been. She remembered the loneliness of her childhood, the invisible walls that separated her from her parents, and the harsh lessons she had learned about perfection and obedience. Yet now she was facing a reality that demanded something entirely different: courage, empathy, and action. The tension inside her grew with every interaction. She observed the girl calmly, directing children to form a line to receive food, ensuring that the smallest acts were carried out with care and dignity. Emily felt a surge of admiration mixed with guilt. She wanted to help, but also feared overstepping the invisible boundaries. She had never been taught to navigate in situations of real struggle. The city around them was alive with distractions, the noise of traffic, the chatter of passers-by. Yet in that small space near the park bench, it felt as if the world had paused to watch the unfolding of a story greater than either of them alone. Emily recalled the countless times she had been mocked at school, the subtle cruelty of classmates who whispered behind her back, and teachers who failed to intervene. She remembered the sting of exclusion when she had attempted to make friends only to be rebuffed. She felt the memory of those moments merge with the current scene, amplifying her emotions. The girl without a home had faced far more severe challenges, yet she carried herself with grace and authority. Emily realized that the stakes here were different than anything she had known. This was not about grades or appearances. It was about survival, compassion, and the courage to act under pressure. She noticed the girl speaking to a woman sitting on the bench. The woman was shaking her head, refusing the offered meal, but the girl did not relent. She spoke gently, persistently, guiding her until she finally accepted. Emily's heart ached as she realized how easy it was to overlook human need when surrounded by privilege. She felt a mix of anger and frustration directed not at the girl but at herself and her father for keeping her so isolated from reality. As the moments passed, Emily saw a man approach the girl looking suspicious. He was angry and demanded that she leave the park. She watched as the girl stood her ground, calmly explaining that she was helping children and adults in need. He scoffed dismissively and threatened to call authorities, yet the girl's composure never wavered. She smiled reassuringly to those around and continued her work. Emily's chest tightened with emotion. She wanted to intervene but also wanted to understand the full story. She noticed the small notebook once again peeking from beneath the coat and realized that it contained the strategies the girl was using to help the community. It was a map of resourcefulness, ingenuity, and courage. She felt a deep curiosity and a growing determination to learn from this encounter. As the day progressed, the challenges escalated. A child fell and scraped a knee. A woman fainted from hunger, and the girl responded, instantly guiding others to provide aid. Emily observed each decision, the quick thinking, the calm authority, and she felt herself being transformed by witnessing such resilience. She remembered her father's dismissive remarks about people less fortunate and how different the reality was from the lessons she had been taught. The contrast between wealth without empathy and courage without resources struck her profoundly. Emily felt a storm of emotions rage inside her: awe, guilt, admiration, and determination merging into a single burning desire to act. Yet she also feared her own inexperience and the enormity of the challenges she had never faced before. She could see the exhaustion on the girl's face, yet there was no complaint, only quiet resolve, and Emily realized that this encounter was testing her in ways she had never been tested before. Every choice, every glance, every hesitation carried weight and significance that could shape her understanding of humanity, and as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park, Emily felt the tension reach a peak. She knew that the next moments would define not just this day, but the path she would take. The girl turned to her with eyes that seemed to see everything inside Emily without judgment, and in that instant, Emily understood that she was being invited into a journey of transformation, one that demanded courage, humility, and action, and the tension in her chest was replaced by a sense of purpose, a commitment to see beyond herself, to witness and participate in the change that was unfolding right before her. And in that growing resolve, Emily felt the connection deepen, the unspoken bond forming a bridge between two worlds, one of privilege and one of survival, one of comfort and one of courage. And as the day drew to a close, she knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The escalation of events had prepared her emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually for the revelations yet to come, and she felt both fear and exhilaration, knowing that the story was far from over. Emily felt her heart pounding as she watched the girl sit down on a worn bench, the notebook resting on her lap. She inched closer, unsure if she should speak or wait. The city sounds faded into a distant hum, as if the world itself had paused to witness this moment. She noticed the careful way the girl opened the notebook, flipping pages with precision. Each page seemed to contain a new idea, a plan, a story of resilience and survival. Emily's curiosity burned brighter than ever. She wondered what secrets were hidden in those scribbles. Were they simple notes, drawings, or a blueprint for changing lives? She remembered all the lessons she had been taught in her life about wealth, power, and influence, and suddenly they seemed hollow compared to the quiet force of determination emanating from the girl. She observed the sketches of children laughing, illustrations of food being distributed, notes detailing shelters, and maps marking safe spaces. Emily's chest tightened with a mixture of awe and disbelief. She realized that this girl had been transforming lives every day in ways Emily had never imagined, yet no one outside this small world would notice. She saw lists of names and small victories that mattered to real people, real children, and adults who had nothing yet gained everything from her guidance. Emily's mind raced. She remembered her own life, the endless luxuries, the parties, the gifts that had never filled the emptiness inside her, and she felt a pang of guilt and longing. She wanted to understand, she wanted to learn, and she wanted to help, but she also feared overstepping boundaries. She hesitated for a moment, and then reached out, her fingers brushing lightly against the notebook. The girl looked up, meeting Emily's gaze, and for a heartbeat the world held still, their eyes locked in silent communication. The girl's expression was calm, yet challenging, as if to ask, "Are you ready to see? Are you ready to understand?" Emily swallowed hard, her mind swirling with questions. What could she possibly teach someone like me, a girl who had never faced true struggle? Emily's curiosity won over fear. She leaned closer and whispered softly, "May I look?" The girl studied her silently for a moment, and then nodded slowly with a faint smile, a smile that conveyed trust and invitation. Emily's hands trembled slightly as she took the notebook and opened it herself. The pages were filled with meticulous notes, detailed plans, and sketches, illustrating acts of kindness, community support, and strategies for Survival, she saw lists of food drive schedules for helping the elderly and diagrams of hidden places where children could be safe. Her eyes widened with each turn of the page. She realized that this was more than a diary. This was a manual of hope and courage, a testament to what one person could do against overwhelming odds. Emily felt a wave of emotion crash over her. She felt humbled, inspired, and challenged all at once. The girl's calm determination contrasted sharply with Emily's life of privilege and comfort, yet in that contrast Emily began to see the potential for her own transformation. The notebook revealed not only the girl's story, but also the possibility that Emily could use her resources, her knowledge, and her position to make a real impact. She felt a mixture of excitement, fear, and responsibility, knowing that the choices she would make next could change lives forever. She traced the lines of sketches, imagining the faces of the children the people helped, and felt an awakening inside her, a call to act, to step beyond the walls of wealth and security, and to engage with the world in a way she had never dared before. The anticipation of what she might discover next, the plans, the hidden strategies, the courage captured in ink and paper filled her with determination, and Emily knew that this moment was only the beginning. The notebook was not just a collection of words, it was a key, a doorway to understanding the power of empathy, courage, and action. And as she closed the last page, Emily looked up at the girl with a newfound resolve, a silent promise forming in her mind to honor what she had seen, to step into a journey of change, and to face the challenges ahead with the same unwavering spirit she had just witnessed. And in that instant the stage was set, the tension had built, the mystery unveiled, and Emily was ready for the revelations that would shock her family, her father, and eventually the entire world. As Emily held the notebook in her hands, the full weight of what she was seeing began to sink in. Each page revealed stories of courage, ingenuity, and selflessness that seemed almost impossible for someone so young and without means to accomplish. She read about children taught to read in makeshift classrooms under bridges, about elderly women receiving warm meals carefully delivered at dawn, about families reunited after days of fear and hunger, about plans to turn abandoned lots into gardens and play spaces. Every detail meticulously noted, every success humbly recorded, every failure acknowledged and learned from. She realized that this girl had not only survived the hardships of her life, but had found a way to transform the suffering around her into hope and opportunity. And as Emily's eyes scanned the list, sketches, and notes, she felt a deep stirring in her heart, a mixture of awe, shock, and inspiration. The realization hit her like a wave that despite having nothing in terms of money or status, the girl possessed more impact, more power to change lives than anyone Emily had ever known. She felt tears prick at her eyes as she imagined the countless people who had benefited from the girl's efforts silently, without recognition or reward, and she realized the magnitude of the lesson before her. This was not just a notebook, it was a manifesto, a testament to the power of courage, compassion, and unwavering dedication. She remembered all the times she had felt powerless in her own life, and now she understood that true power did not come from wealth, influence, or family status, but from action, intent, and the willingness to face adversity head on. She recalled her father often dismissing those without means as unimportant or incapable, yet here was living proof that such assumptions were entirely false. The notebook also contained letters of thanks and small drawings from the people whose lives had been touched, each one a quiet victory, a mark of impact that Emily had never experienced. The contrast between her own life of comfort and this girl's life of struggle filled her with both humility and determination. She realized that she had been blind to the ways she could have made a difference, and that the girl had shown her the path through her courage, example, and meticulous work. As she looked up from the pages, she saw her father approaching. He had arrived at the park and witnessed the scene, the girl standing calmly, handing out food, the notebook in Emily's hands, and the children and adults gathered respectfully around them. He frowned, confusion and disbelief crossing his features. He asked what was happening. Emily took a deep breath, and in a voice steady despite the flood of emotion, she explained everything she had seen, how the girl had helped so many people with so little, how the notebook contained detailed plans and records of real impact, and how witnessing this had changed her understanding of life, privilege, and responsibility. Her father's eyes widened. He glanced at the girl, and then at the notebook. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. Immediately the weight of realization struck him. The contrast between the wealth he controlled and the tangible difference this girl was making could not be ignored. He felt a mixture of shock, guilt, and admiration. Emily saw the change in him and realized that the lessons she had learned from the girl were now beginning to ripple outward, affecting not just herself, but her father too. The girl, without a home, watched silently, a small smile playing at her lips, as if she understood the transformation taking place. She had not spoken much, but her actions had spoken volumes, and now those actions were creating waves far beyond what she had imagined. Emily turned the notebook back to the girl and whispered, "Thank you, your courage has changed me forever." And in that moment, the bond between them solidified, a silent acknowledgement that the notebook was more than paper. It was a bridge connecting lives across divides. Emily knew that the revelations she had discovered would not only shock her family, but would challenge their assumptions about power, wealth, and influence. It would force her father to confront the limitations of privilege and recognize the true meaning of impact. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the park, Emily felt a sense of purpose and clarity. She understood that the notebook had revealed more than just the girl's story. It had revealed a path forward, a blueprint for living a life of courage, empathy, and meaningful action, and she knew that the next steps she and her father would take together would be watched by many and perhaps inspire countless others to see that true change begins with understanding, compassion, and the courage to act. And the world around them seemed to hold its breath, waiting to witness the first steps of a journey that had begun with a single girl, a small notebook, and a chance encounter that would shock the world. Emily felt her pulse race as she turned to face her father. He stood there towering in his expensive suit, his expression a mixture of confusion, disbelief, and restrained frustration. She held the notebook firmly in her hands, a symbol of truth, courage, and responsibility. She took a deep breath and spoke with a clarity and firmness she had never used in his presence before. "Dad, I need you to see what I've seen," she began, her voice steady yet laced with emotion. "This girl has accomplished more in a single year than many people, with every advantage we could ever imagine. She has fed children, guided the elderly, provided shelter and hope, and she did it all with nothing while we sit surrounded by wealth, unaware of the struggles others face." Her father's brow furrowed. He opened his mouth to interrupt, but Emily continued, refusing to be silenced. "I'm asking you not as your daughter, but as someone who has witnessed real courage, real action, and the impact that one person can have. This notebook contains plans, records of lives changed. It is a testament to what truly matters." And he stared at the girl who had been standing calmly, yet confidently watching the exchange. He looked back at Emily, his voice caught in his throat. He had always believed wealth, power, and influence define success, yet here was evidence that true success came from empathy, courage, and action. He finally spoke, but the words lacked their usual authority. He said, "Emily, this is impossible. How could someone with nothing do all this? How could you be so certain she has done all of this?" Emily's gaze did not waver. She replied calmly, but with conviction, "Dad, I've read every page. I've seen the children, the families, the elders, everything she has accomplished, and I understand now that our world has been incomplete. We have power, we have resources, and now we have responsibility. We can either continue as we are blind to the impact we could make, or we can step into a new reality and be part of something far greater than ourselves." The tension in the air was palpable. The city seemed to pause, as if acknowledging the magnitude of this confrontation. Her father's eyes softened. He looked at Emily, then at the girl, and finally at the notebook. The realization slowly dawned on him that all the power and privilege he had accumulated meant nothing if it was not used to make a meaningful difference. The girl, without a home, stepped forward, a gentle smile on her face. She spoke for the first time, her voice calm yet commanding. Emily looked at her, expecting words of gratitude, yet the girl said nothing. She simply handed the notebook back to Emily. The gesture was clear. The responsibility was now shared. The challenge was set, and the opportunity was undeniable. Emily turned back to her father and said, "We have to act. We have to help those who cannot help themselves." He hesitated a moment longer, then nodded slowly, a rare display of humility and acceptance of the lesson before him. Together they discussed plans, using the girls' strategies, adapting them to larger scales, using resources wisely and ethically. They envisioned programs feeding thousands, mentoring children, rebuilding communities. Emily felt a surge of determination. She realized that this moment was a turning point, a pivot from a life of passive privilege to one of active impact and responsibility. She saw the change in her father's eyes, a mixture of pride in her insight and an awakening to the realities he had ignored for too long. The confrontation was not just between Emily and her father, it was between old perceptions and new possibilities, between indifference and engagement, between fear of failure and courage to act. She could feel the weight of history pressing on this moment, knowing that their decisions would ripple outward, affecting lives far beyond their own. The air was thick with emotion, tension, and anticipation, yet also a sense of possibility that had never existed in the mansion or boardrooms. The notebook had become more than Paper and ink, it was a catalyst, a spark igniting transformation in Emily, her father, and through their combined efforts, countless others. As the conversation continued, strategies were formed, deadlines set, volunteers recruited, and plans adapted. Emily felt a mixture of exhilaration, exhaustion, and hope. She realized that the confrontation had been necessary to break through layers of indifference and misunderstanding, and as the evening descended, casting long shadows across the park, the three of them stood together, the girl without a home, Emily the heiress, and her father a billionaire, all bound by a newfound understanding that courage, compassion, and action mattered far more than wealth or status. And in that instant, Emily knew that the climax had arrived. The confrontation had shifted everything, the tension had been released, and a new chapter was beginning, one that would redefine their lives, impact countless others, and prove that one person with courage and a willingness to act could indeed shock the world. After the confrontation, Emily felt a wave of relief and anticipation. She had faced her father, challenged his assumptions, and together with the girl begun a journey of meaningful action. The days that followed were filled with intense planning and tireless effort. Emily could hardly believe how quickly the ideas in the notebook began to transform into real projects. She and her father started by funding food programs, expanding them beyond the park and into neighboring communities. They provided resources for education, healthcare, and shelter, leveraging the girl's strategies and adapting them to reach more people. Emily witnessed firsthand the power of collaboration. The girl guided them patiently, showing them how to connect with the community, how to respect people's dignity, and how to ensure that assistance reached those who truly needed it. She taught Emily that impact was measured not in numbers or statistics, but in lives changed, smiles restored, and hope renewed. Emily herself began to change. She noticed the emptiness she had always felt filling with purpose and connection. The lessons she had learned from privilege alone were insufficient, but the lessons learned from courage, empathy, and action were transforming her into a young woman who understood responsibility, compassion, and the weight of her choices. Her father, too, underwent a profound shift. He had always believed that wealth and influence were the ultimate measures of success, but now he began to see that his true power lay in using those resources to uplift and empower others. He spent hours in the field observing the projects, listening to the people they helped, and learning from the girls' insights. The change in him was gradual, yet undeniable. Colleagues and staff noticed his new humility and openness. He began to fund initiatives he would once have dismissed as inefficient, and he took genuine interest in the outcomes. Emily and the girl worked tirelessly side by side. Every day was a mixture of planning, problem solving, and hands-on action. They navigated bureaucracy, poverty, and skepticism, yet their determination never wavered. The girl's knowledge of the city networks and needs proved invaluable, while Emily's resources and organizational skills amplified the impact. Together they created programs that were sustainable, empowering communities and fostering a sense of dignity for those who had been ignored and forgotten. The media soon began to take notice. Emily's father reluctantly allowed press coverage, and the story of the girl without a home and the billionaire's daughter, who had recognized her courage, began to spread. The public was captivated. The juxtaposition of wealth and struggle, the evidence of real action and impact, inspired others to contribute their time, resources, and skills. Volunteers arrived from all over the city, eager to participate. Emily realized that the ripple effect of this single encounter was beyond anything she had imagined. She saw communities strengthened, lives improved, and hope restored. She felt pride in the work, but also humility, knowing that the real hero was the girl who had risked everything to help others without recognition or reward. The father-daughter relationship deepened. Emily and her father bonded over shared experiences, seeing the tangible impact of their efforts. The conversations became less about control or expectation and more about understanding, listening, and learning. The girl, too, found her role evolving. She gained recognition and support without losing her independence or humility. Her vision expanded as more resources became available, allowing her to implement projects she had only dreamed of before. The city began to change. Little by little, neighborhoods became safer, children had access to education, and nourishment, communities organized to sustain themselves. Emily realized that the consequences of that day in the park extended far beyond her family and beyond the city. The story of courage, compassion, and collaboration was inspiring countless others to act in their own lives. The lessons she had learned about true strength, the importance of empathy, and the power of action were now being lived not only by her father and herself, but by a growing network of people determined to make a difference. And in quiet moments, Emily reflected on how a single choice, a single encounter, and a single notebook had changed the trajectory of multiple lives. She felt gratitude, awe, and an unwavering commitment to continue the work she realized that consequences were not just about punishment or reward, but about the transformation that occurs when courage meets opportunity, and she understood that the path forward required constant engagement, patience, and perseverance. Yet she was no longer afraid. She knew that with empathy, determination, and action, she and the girl, and even her father, could create change that was real, lasting, and powerful. And as she looked around at the lives being touched, she felt the satisfaction of witnessing a world slowly reshaped by courage and compassion, and knew that the story they had begun would continue to grow, impact, and inspire far beyond what anyone could have imagined. Emily stood in the park as the sun dipped low, casting golden light over the people whose lives had been touched. She felt a quiet sense of fulfillment, yet knew that the journey was far from over. She looked at the girl who had started it all, the girl who had nothing yet had given everything, and Emily felt gratitude, awe, and admiration all at once. She realized that the lessons she had learned extended beyond her father, beyond herself. They were lessons for everyone watching. They were reminders that courage, compassion, and action mattered more than wealth, privilege, or status. She thought about the choices she had made, the confrontation with her father, the decision to open her heart to someone so different from herself, and the willingness to act that had led to real, tangible change. And she knew that these were the moments that defined life, the moments that shaped character and created ripples of impact far beyond what anyone could predict. She turned to the camera, imagining the millions of people who might be listening, and said, what if we all made a choice to act with empathy, to step beyond our comfort zones, to recognize the power within each of us to make a difference? What lives could we change? What hope could we restore? Emily paused, letting the weight of her words sink, and she thought about the children learning to read, the elderly receiving meals, the families reunited, and she felt a wave of emotion that made her chest tighten. She wanted everyone to understand that real power was not about money or influence, but about courage, intention, and consistent action. She smiled softly, thinking of the girl who had unknowingly become her teacher and guide, and said, perhaps the most important lesson is that no matter how small you may feel, no matter how little you possess, you have the ability to change the world around you. The impact may not be immediate or widely recognized, but every act of kindness, courage, and empathy creates a ripple that extends further than you can imagine. Emily's father stood beside her now, transformed, humbled, and committed. He had learned alongside her that true leadership involved responsibility, compassion, and engagement. He looked at the camera and nodded silently, acknowledging the truth of her words. The girl smiled too, a quiet knowing that her life's work had inspired change far beyond her own efforts. Emily turned back to the audience and with a gentle voice said, if this story has touched you, if it has inspired even a small part of your heart, take a moment to reflect on what you can do in your own life to make a difference. Share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to the channel to follow journeys like this, and don't forget to click the next video appearing on your screen now to continue witnessing stories that challenge assumptions, inspire courage, and demonstrate the power of empathy. Emily's eyes glistened with emotion, yet her smile was calm and encouraging. She knew that the story was complete for now, that the lessons had been shared, and that the invitation to act had been extended to every viewer. She raised the notebook slightly, a symbol of courage, hope, and transformation, and whispered thank you to the girl who had changed her life and countless others, silently knowing that the real story was in the actions yet to come. And as the camera slowly pulled back, capturing the three of them together, Emily, the girl, and her father, standing united by purpose, hope, and the promise of change, she felt a sense of closure, peace, and anticipation for the journeys ahead. She took a deep breath, smiled warmly, and said, remember, your choices matter, your actions can inspire, and even the smallest act of courage can shock the world. And with that, she turned toward the people around her, ready to continue the work, ready to live the lessons learned, and ready to inspire others to do the same. And as the screen faded, she left the audience with a final thought, a question to carry with them. What could you do today to change someone's life? And in that moment, the story concluded, leaving hearts stirred, minds awakened, and souls inspired to act.